wanted to ask you, how does an introvert get the courage to do what you just said? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to right now, they're introverted naturally. I mean, do you even believe in introverts, or is that also a practice behavior?
Well, there definitely is a difference, obviously. I asked my vocal teacher the same thing. I said, what's the difference between an introvert and an extrovert? And she goes, the key thing is just how they get energy. Are you introverted or are you extroverted? I mean, I know I'm very extroverted. I get energy from being around people. But she goes, introverts, they lose energy once they're around people. So she goes, look, that's the key difference. Now, let me ask you a question. A pianist, if they're an extrovert, would they play differently to an introvert? I had to think about that for a while because I thought, surely this is a trick question. And I said, yes. And she goes, no, you're an idiot. There's no difference. You will not be able to tell who is an introvert and who is an extrovert if you listen to a pianist. Great music is great music. Your voice is an instrument. Great music is great music. She goes, the only difference is introverts have to be highly strategic with when they play their instrument. Extroverts can play their instrument all day. It's more difficult for an introvert because you have to be highly selective when you play your instrument. It's an excuse that I think some of my friends who are introverted used to give, and where they say, oh, no, because I'm introvert, I'm not going to play my instrument well at all. And it's like, no. You still have energy. You just have to use it much more strategically, and you have to be highly aware of how you can rejuvenate that energy.
Yes.
You have to be very conscious. It's harder for introverts. It is harder for introverts to acknowledge that. However, if you've got great ways to be able to rejuvenate your energy and you have good menu items, like good things you can go out and snack on and recreate some of that energy and rejuvenate, then you still have to learn how to play your instrument well. Otherwise, you will become that person that, and again, the majority of my students are the person you described. It's I'm way smarter than John. I'm way smarter than Sarah, but why did they get the promotion? Why didn't I get it? Well, it's because if you are technically 10 out of 10, but your communication skills are a 3 out of 10, do you think your organization perceives you to be a 10 out of 10 or a 3 out of 10? You are only as good as you can communicate. So as you improve your communication skills, you start to shine your light more brightly in the world. Whereas a lot of my students tend to think, oh, but it's my boss's responsibility to see the brilliance in me. No, it's not. It's your responsibility to shine brightly, not their responsibility.
Yeah.
So when you take it upon yourself, things change. Filler words as well. And so like, do you know what I mean? We do that because we don't understand the power of the pause. Whereas the pause allows people to process what you're saying. If there's one thing you do if you listen to this episode, is record a video of yourself. And you'll thank Jay and I later. Because you'll see things that you didn't realize you know. The reason we hate the sound of our voice is because when we hear ourselves on a recording, that's not how we sound to ourselves. And the reason you have a different sounding voice to yourself is when you're speaking, the vibrations go through your bones and your muscles, and then it hits your ears.
You know, one thing I've learned on my journey is that education has the power to transform lives. But for many, traditional college just doesn't work with busy schedules and financial realities. American Public University is designed to fit your life, not the other way around. With more than 200 online degree programs to choose from, APU's 8-week courses start every month. But what really stands out is the incredible value APU provides. Beyond their already competitive tuition rates, APU eliminates out-of-pocket costs like application fees and ebooks. And most students can take advantage of their opportunity grant, which gives you 10% off undergraduate and master's level tuition. Plus, you get access to comprehensive career and mental health resources to support your entire education journey. Whether you're looking to expand your knowledge, pivot to something new, or finally complete that degree you started years ago, American Public University makes it possible. Remember, investing in yourself is always worth it. Take the next step in your journey by visiting apu.apus.edu. There's such a need for ownership and accountability for our lives because like you said, and I've for a long time believed that someone was going to come and spot my talent and see it and nurture it and help me build up. And I realized no one was coming and that no one could see it because they were too busy in their own lives. It's not that they were bad people or they were bitter or they were wrong or they were not able to spot talent. Everyone was busy. People were just busy in their day-to-day. They don't have time to spot your skill and your talent and nurture it. If someone's listening to this right now and they're saying, Vin, I love what you just said. I'm an introvert. I agree with you. There are times when I can and can't perform or can't bring it out. How do I hold energy? How do I create energy if I have a meeting coming up today, if I'm going to be on a Zoom call today? What do I do in order to make sure I'm at my best? Because right now I'm going from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, Zoom call to Zoom call. I'm just exhausted.
First thing is you have to learn how to protect your energy. For example, yesterday I was doing a couple of different podcasts while I'm here in LA, and I didn't leave the hotel room. The podcast wasn't until 4. I didn't leave the hotel room at all, to the point where my videographer freaked out and just knocked on my door and said, "Are you okay? Are you still all right? Are you all right?" I'm like, yeah. I'm conserving my energy.
Yeah.
I'm a fairly high energy person, so I have to conserve my energy. So all morning is, again, I didn't talk to anyone this morning. I had to wait to talk to you, because if you don't conserve your energy and you just give it all the time everywhere, then you won't have any. So that's number one. Got to conserve your energy, right? And then the second thing is have go-to, I call them menu items. Have some menu items that you can quickly reach for. So one that I love is Wim Hof, the breathing technique, right? The guided bubble breath. 2 cycles of that before a meeting, my brain is oxygenated, my body feels good. I feel like I just feel revitalized.
Can you break the pattern down for us, just in case people don't know?
Okay. So if people don't know YouTube it, but it's 30 deep breaths in and out. So 30 of that. And then after that, at the end of the 30th one, you breathe out and then hold your breath. And you'll be shocked how long you can hold your breath for. You'll be shocked. The first time I did this, I couldn't believe I could hold it for 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. I thought I was going to die. I thought I was dying. And then at the end of you holding your breath for a minute or so, as long as you can, after that, just take a deep breath in, hold for 15 seconds, and release. And that breathing technique alone has energized me, even when I am doing Zoom calls at 3 a.m. in the morning, because I work with some US clients. It just gets me 3 cycles of that, 2 cycles of that. Incredible. I was not a believer in that at all when I first learned. I was like, yeah, surely that's not going to work. What, breathing? I do that every day. Changed my life.
Yeah, I agree.
My go-to technique to energize myself. The next one to me is a snack, something healthy. I love blueberries, raspberries with a little bit of cream. Oh man, a light meal. I love it, right? And then favorite beverage. My go-to is coffee. I don't know. I feel like some people are going to tell me it's going to kill me, but I love it. So have your own go-to. Yeah. Right? Have your own go-to.
Routine.
A routine.
Yeah.
I have a playlist of videos that crack me up. I don't know. Have you seen videos that made you laugh?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Save them.
Yeah.
Save them because they're patent
puts you in a great mood. Yeah.
Put you in a great mood. I'll give you one last one from me is, again, I've just got so many things out of my menu items.
No, I love it.
I also love orchestral war music. Okay. So like Hans Zimmer-esque.
Yes. Yeah. I love Hans Zimmer. Yeah.
And if you're listening to Interstellar, Hans Zimmer, while you're doing Wim Hof, as you take a sip of coffee, oh man.
I'm going to try that out.
Yeah, give that a go.
I'm going to give that a go. Yeah, that's awesome.
It's an intoxicating mix.
I love that. Yeah, my routine's a lot more simple. But
okay.
But I love, but you're right. Everyone needs one. I went on my world tour 2 years ago now. Yeah. We did 40 cities across 3 to 4 months around the world. Got to come to Australia.
I know.
A place that I absolutely loved. It was my first time there. I didn't get to come to Adelaide. I hope I do next time.
I know. We're offended, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, no, gosh. Please don't be.
No,
we did Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne. And honestly, there was something about the Australian people that stuck with me. I was telling you this a bit earlier.
Yeah.
There was this banter back, which I loved. I would banter with people on stage. I'd little quips and things, and they'd come back at it, and I loved it. And the other thing was, everyone was so grateful. Oh. Everyone would just say to me, they'd be like, "Thank you for coming all this way." And I was like, "Wait a minute, you came to see my show. I should be thanking you." And I was so grateful that people turned up in, the thousands that came out, and it was just amazing. Everyone was so grateful. There was such a great energy. But the reason I brought it up is I realized that my tour schedule was extremely different from a keynote. Because a keynote is I've got to do it once and then it's done. This was every night, if not every other night, if not sometimes in Australia, I did 2 shows back to back.
In the same day?
On the same day, because we were at the Sydney Opera House for 2 days, but we did 2 shows in one day, 1 show the next day. So 3 shows across 2 days, and then went to, I think it was Brisbane or Melbourne that was last. And so my tour schedule was different, but I realized I had to stop eating at 12. My show was at 8 p.m. I had to stop eating at 12. I'd have a protein bar around 5, 6 p.m. to give me that little bit of boost of energy. I'd have a sparkling water because I preferred that just before I went on. And then I would have to eat. I'd get off stage at 10, do a meet and greet for 2 hours, and then I'd eat at midnight every day. Now, that's not my normal
wow.
schedule at all. Like, that's
Yeah.
completely against my normal schedule.
Yeah.
But I had to find that. And I think that's what's so interesting about this is that I sleep at 9:30 every night. That's when I'm in bed.
Wow.
So for me to be having to eat dinner at midnight is so abnormal, but I found that there was a different routine. I also didn't go out to any noisy places before or after the show because I had to be on vocal rest. I knew I'd lose my voice if I went to a restaurant or whatever. So for 3-4 months, I didn't go to a restaurant while I was out in all these cool cities. Everyone's like, oh, did you go to this place? I was like, no, I didn't go to any of those places because I would have lost my voice and then I wouldn't be able to perform. And I think that's the important part of the craft, that there's a dedication and a surrender to this is what matters.
Yeah.
And therefore some of this other stuff is going to have to fall by the wayside.
And what you just said made me think the importance of finding what works for you.
Yes.
I feel like people have this misunderstanding that I should just have this energy naturally.
Yes.
Back to your original question, right? I should just have it naturally. And if I don't have it naturally, there's something wrong with me. It's like, no, you had to not eat for 8 hours to get yourself into the right state. And I think that fasted state helps us think more sharp and helps us be more on point, right? And it takes work to show up with energy, intention, and purpose. Whereas I think people have this illusion in their minds that, oh, it should be easy.
Yeah.
And if
or
it
we
doesn't
think
feel
we're
easy,
weak.
yeah. Or there's something wrong. It's like, no, there's a craft to it. Like even preparing for a Zoom call. Some people go, oh, is that a bit much? But that's how you show up 3 Zoom calls back to back. Like structure it with 15 minutes in between. You have to reset. Even for me, it's doing these podcasts, traveling overseas. I'm exhausted. But then again, if I choose to give this energy, I need to conserve it.
Yes.
I need to have ways to rejuvenate it. And I have to go through the process. And you have to commit to the craft. You have to commit to that discipline. Whereas if you one night did eat at 6 p.m., well, then that show wouldn't be as great. But you were dedicated. And I think that is what people have to really understand is there are ways to do it, but you've got to take yourself through the process.
Yeah. Absolutely. For someone who's listening to their voice now, they're listening to us. They're like, Vin, I'm going to listen to this. They start listening back to their voice and they cringe
they do.
at their voice because we all have this strange, and by the way, we all have it. I have, and I want to say that here, I have that too. No one likes listening to the sound of their own voice.
Yeah.
There's something uncomfortable about it. First of all, do you know where that comes from?
Yeah.
And then what do we do about that when you're listening back and you just... your whole body, your face, everything.
It's not just listening, it's when you look at yourself on video too. And there's a reason for that. The reason we hate the sound of our voice is because when we hear ourselves on a recording, that's not how we sound to ourselves. The way you sound to yourself, you have a deep, rich, Barry White voice, right? And the reason you have a different sounding voice to yourself is when you're speaking, the vibrations go through your bones and your muscles and then it hits your ears. The vibrations of the sound is going through a more dense medium, which creates a lower pitch sound. So when you hear yourself via an audio replay, that's going through the airwaves. So your voice sounds thinner and higher pitch. So you immediately go, no. I don't sound like that. I sound like this. I don't sound like this. And they freak out. So that difference in the medium in which you're receiving the sound causes people immediately to reject because it actually does sound different. The reason why people don't like looking at those ones on video is because it's flipped the other way.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, I don't look like that. Because you look at yourself in the mirror every day. Whereas on camera, it shows the way other people see you. Whereas when you look at yourself in the mirror, it's flipped. So your entire life, you've seen yourself a certain way, right? Unless your face is perfectly symmetrical, right? Then you go, oh no, I don't look like that. So immediately people go, I look weird. I sound weird. So the thing you need to do there is desensitize it, mate. Just listen to yourself over and over. Like, do you listen to a podcast now and do you still freak out about your voice?
Not anymore.
Not anymore, right? Yeah, because you're desensitized. So what happens is a calibration happens. What you hear in your head and what you hear on an audio replay, the calibration starts to just do this. And then gradually you can't hear the difference anymore. And then when you look at yourself on camera and also in the mirror, the calibration starts to happen. You go, oh, that's me. Oh, that's just me.
Yeah.
It's painful.
Yeah.
But if you go through that, you get over it.
Yeah. It's all that discomfort in the beginning.
Yeah, it is.
That we all need to go through. We were talking about this earlier. So I was really fortunate because when I was 11 years old, my parents were so scared that I was so shy and so insecure that they forced me to go to public speaking school.
Yeah.
And so my school had an extracurricular activity with the London Academy of Music, Drama and Arts. And for 7 years, I had about 3 sessions a week of 2 to 3 hours each. It was fairly rigorous.
Yeah.
And you'd have to take exams. And the exams were pretty rigorous too. So every year you'd go to this exam and you'd turn up and the examiner would be in a room. And before you even meet the examiner, you could take a book.
Yeah.
It could be any book you wanted, but they were going to pick any page and ask you to read it in a emotive, dramatic, and powerful way.
Ooh.
And so they could pick any page out of a book. The next part of the test was they would give you a topic 15 minutes before. You'd be in a library. This is when we didn't have,
internet.
Exactly. Well, there probably was the internet, but there wasn't this. They wanted to keep you away from all of that. You'd be in a library and you'd have 15 minutes to prep a talk about the dangers of smoking or whatever it was, a topic that they'd picked. And you had to structure a talk out and the talk had to be 5 minutes long. And so you had to do that. The third part of it was you had a prepared presentation with visual aids. This is when we still use projector screens. And,
and the slides.
Classic. And then you were tested on that, including the visual aids that you used. And I'm sure there were a couple of other things as well.
Yeah.
And then you'd get graded. And it was uncomfortable. We'd be sitting in a class and remember, we're all like young teenagers at this point. So everyone's even more judgmental and more, and you get into the class and you're all making these weird faces to try and warm yourselves up and they're telling you to enunciate and pronounce all of the letters differently and you're doing all these silly things. Your friends are laughing at you. And it's exactly what you're saying. The reason I brought it up is that it was years of discomfort. It was just years of looking silly, looking stupid, sounding bad, giving a bad talk, giving a bad presentation, walking into a room, to then all of a sudden that discomfort changed to confidence.
Yeah.
And I find that for most of us, especially as you get older, going through that discomfort becomes harder. For example, if me and you, I don't know how old you are, but I tried to pick up a sport a couple of years ago in the pandemic. It was much harder for me to learn a sport at this age than if I played it in my teens. So when you're meeting people who are in their 20s, 30s, maybe 40s, 50s, and they're trying to change their instrument, they're trying to change their voice, that discomfort is so much harder than when I started at 11 or whatever age you started at. How do you encourage people to sit with that discomfort, to go through that? Because it is harder.
Such a beautiful insight that you shared there. The reason it was easier for you at 11 is because you were new to a lot of these behaviors.
Completely.
The behaviors haven't been ingrained in you yet. Whereas when you're 40 now, and I'm 38. So once
I'm
you're
37, so yeah, same age.
So once you're 40 and you realize this, you've done 40 years of repeating one behavior, two behaviors, a series of behaviors over and over and over and over again. That's why it becomes harder, right? And all of a sudden it becomes way more difficult because now you have to unlearn something that you've been repeating for that long. So I think there's really difficult there. One other point I wanted to mention what you said there too is that you said you went through years of discomfort. A lot of people have this idea that, again, it should just be a quick process. And if I'm struggling for a period, then something's not right. It's like, no, struggle, that's good. That it means you're in the process of change, right? You're going through the process of change. And you have to be willing to put in that effort, go through the struggle. And I think the thing that people are resistant to is failing. Because I believe, and I want to ask you this question, did you learn more from your successes in those situations, in those public speaking exams, or did you learn more from your failures?
Failures.
People don't want to fail now. I don't want to make a video, put it out on Instagram where I've made a fool out of myself. But that's how we learn, right? I don't want to do a speech where I forget what I'm going to say, but that's how you learn. You have it happen, then you go back and you go, okay, why did I forget? Oh, it wasn't well rehearsed, right? Why did I forget? I didn't know how to deal with my nerves. Now you need to learn how to rehearse. Now you need to learn how to manage your nerves. So all of a sudden, if you don't fail, you don't know where your weakness is, and then you don't know what to work on. So you got to pay the price. I think you've got to pay the price. Back to your original question.
No, that's a great, I am so glad you brought that up.
Yeah, it's just so important because I think people just now are resistant to failing. Yet we learn far more from our failures than we do from our successes.
For sure.
So for the person who's 40, oh my God, Vin, what do I do? Am I doomed? No, you're not. It's just when Jay was 11, he was able to work on 3 or 4 different behaviors at the same time because you're so elastic, right? There's so many things that could change about you when you're at that age. But when you're less elastic in your older years, you just now have to focus on one thing at a time. So I've coached a few CEOs of some pretty big companies here in the US. And it's so funny because when I map out I used to do it, I don't do it anymore. But when I did it and I mapped out their coaching program and I showed it to them, they got upset because they're like, wait, you're making me work on my volume for 4 weeks and that's all we're doing? This feels stupid. And in those moments, I just had the courage to go, well, look, then pick somebody else. It's okay, get a refund, pick somebody else. Because I kind of said to them, you're 50 and you've been speaking with a very default quiet volume for 50 years. Do you expect to be able to change that in 48 hours? Because I get them to send me a video every day, right? And every time they send me a video, I go, watch what you're doing for the first 7 days. Even though you know we're working on volume, your default volume is like a 4 out of 10. And that's when they go, oh, far out. I keep defaulting back to it. So the older you are, you've got to realize one thing at a time. One thing at a time. But it drives people crazy. I want to do 7 things with it. I want to do hand gestures. I want to learn how to story tell. I want to use volume. I want to add pitch and melody. I want to do all of it. But that's also what leads to no change. That's why most people never change the way they sound, because they're not willing to sit and be patient and do one thing at a time.
Yeah. A good example is thinking about it like driving.
Yes.
How many bad driving habits have we picked up in the last 20 years because we haven't been tested, we haven't reviewed it.
Scary.
Right? And I recently had to redo my driving test because of moving here and getting a state ID and all that kind of stuff. And I realized just how many bad habits you pick up. Now, I believed myself to be a safe driver and a good driver and a responsible driver, but still, the fact that for 20 years, no one's watched me and checked on me driving, you lose that. And so that's 20 years of driving, which is something we do every day, which is similar to speaking. You're doing it every day, but no one's doing what you're not.
That's such a good point.
Right? You're not recording yourself driving and sending it to someone.
You just made me think of something when you said driving as well. I mean, when you think back to the 4 stages of learning we talked about before, and you talk about unconscious competence, to give people a sense of what's possible once you really go down the path of mastery of communication skills, think of an area in your life where you have achieved unconscious competence. It's driving. Whether we're good or not, that's another thing, right? But most people, I would dare say sometimes too, you're kind of unconscious when you're driving because you're so good at it. You've done it every single day of your adult life. So you've gotten to a point where you are unconsciously competent, right? And then people always ask me now, they go, oh, Vin, when you communicate now, are you thinking about gesturing? Are you thinking about storytelling? Are you thinking about, I go, no, I don't. Because like with the car, when you think you want to go to the grocery store, do you have any thought now into, oh, I need to open the door. Oh, I need to check my blind spot. Oh, I need to adjust my, no, it's all automatic. So the reason why I try to inspire my students to improve their communication skills, because I say to them, that means in the very next conversation you have with a client, a customer, a family member, you can just think, I want this outcome. I want to be able to help them in this way. Your skills and abilities will just take you there. And that's why you come across in these podcasts and the professional people who do this, it's so natural. And when people are sitting there going, I want to be that natural, but it requires a dedication to mastery.
Yeah, and that's the point that I really want people to get. I remember sitting and watching one of my favorite comedians who became a friend, and he was just brilliant. Like he would have the audience laughing and in raptures, like in the palm of his hand, right? So but everything looked and felt completely off the cuff. So he'd literally just turn up on stage. It wasn't like he wasn't in the flow. Sometimes you watch a comedian and you can tell there's an arc and you can tell there's a story and you can tell it's planned. This guy would literally come up. He'd be like, hey, has anyone read any books lately? And like someone would name a book and he'd be like, oh yeah, I read that page. And he'd make a joke out of it. And then someone else, and he'd be like, oh, what's your favorite song right now? And it's all a conversation. Brings out a song. Oh yeah, I can't believe he said that lyric. Makes a joke about the lyric. And it was unbelievable to watch. And I spoke to him afterwards and I said to him, who did you learn that from? Like, where did that come from? He said, I practiced it so much that it looks spontaneous, but it's completely trained. And I think that's what everyone wants. Everyone wants for it to look spontaneous. But that took years of discomfort, courage, failure, training, mastery. When I'm telling a story or hosting a podcast, I'm not trying to sound like anything because your voice has for so many years become that way. And I'm at a point in my career for sure. I was asked to I just gave 3 keynotes in the Middle East in January and in Dubai. And I said to myself, I'm going to walk into these and just channel. Like I just want to go in there and just be.
Mm.
I'm gonna have some notes. I know what I need to talk about. I know the title of the talk.
Yeah.
But I'm just gonna be, and I had so much fun, Vin.
Oh.
I had so much fun. And it seemed like the feedback was great from the audience, whatever, but it was just so much fun for me because I was like, I just want to feed off the energy in the room. And they were all, and my friend, one of my best friends, he came with me and he was like, Jay, every talk was different. He goes, at the 1 billion summit, you were hilarious. Like, it was like watching a comedian. And then he goes, at Mind Valley, it was really deep and like, you know, philosophical. And then at the other place, the corporate event, it was very professional. He was like, there were 3 talks in 3 days and they were all completely different. And I was like, because I was just feeling the energy of the room.
Yeah.
And I love that. Walk me through how many hours, how much time, how many years have you seen people take to get to a point where they feel that sense
of mastery,
of unconscious competence, not of mastery, because that can take many years, but of a sense of comfortability where it's flowing and they don't feel phony and contrived anymore. What have you seen?
It depends on your
shortest,
level of desire.
What have you seen?
I've seen unbelievable change within 6 months. And this is someone who has become problem aware that this thing has been destroying my relationships, destroying my career growth. And when that pain becomes that great and you become problem aware, I can't believe how quickly some of my students have been able to change. And then I've seen it take as long as 3 or 4 years. And where
That's still great though.
Yeah, exactly. And where I'll get an email 3 to 4 years later and they go, I can't believe it's taken me this long to email you. I almost feel a little bit ashamed. I'm like, no, because it took me 10. So that's amazing. That's incredible, right? Because it ranges so much depending on the intensity of the pain they feel and the realizations they have. I have to bring it back to what you said before, because what you said before about you going to 3 events and just going with the flow, I know the people listening to this right now, while you were saying that, they were clenching their butt cheeks because they were like, that's so freaky. And I wanted to speak to that because what you just described to me is one of the ultimate benefits of mastery in this arena, and it's freedom. You were free in each one of those speeches. You were free to go where the audience wanted to go. That's one of the things I rarely ever get to even talk about because I don't get to speak to others usually who are so proficient at this skill set. That's ultimate freedom, Jay. When you feel something, you think something, and you're immediately in the moment able to articulate it with clarity and make people laugh at the same time. That is so powerful, man.
I'm getting shivers just you saying it. It's like goosebumps.
And to know you're going into that, being able to do that, like again, it's achievable for you listening to this too.
What I love about it is that there was so much discovery for me on that stage. And that's what I do it for. I don't do it to show off or be like, oh, look, I don't need to prepare or be lazy or not respect my client. I do it for discovery. And what I mean by that is when I don't plan to that 100%, I now have the opportunity to find and discover in the moment. So there were so many things that I said in those 3 keynotes that I've never said in my life. And that's where I get joy. Yeah, you create.
Yeah.
And I said that first because I wanted to take it back and say, my first experience of public speaking, I want to ask you about yours. I was around 7 years old.
Yeah.
And my mom always wanted me to be on stage and do things like that. And I didn't. And so it was a religious assembly and I was dressed as people from my culture. And I was asked to go and sing and speak on this prayer in front of my class. Now, I grew up in London. I grew up in an area where there weren't loads of Indian people like me. I'm now on stage dressed in traditional garb, but it was basically me wrapped in a sari, if you've ever seen that.
Yes, I have.
And my mum had even put some makeup on me probably to try and make me look more the part, and it didn't help.
Okay.
And then I'm on stage in front of all my friends. I'm 7, 8 years old, something like that. And I stand up there with this prayer that I'm not that well versed in or practiced. And I start singing it. I have a terrible singing voice, and that's not humble. There's a difference between a speaking voice and a singing voice. I can't sing to save my life. And I start singing, and the whole audience starts laughing immediately. Like literally all my friends are rolling on the floor laughing. And now I'm starting to cry because I felt really embarrassed. And I looked down because I forgot the words. And now I can't see the words because my tears have blurred the words in my paper. So I've lost the notes. So I also don't know the words. And then to make it even worse than that, my teacher walks on stage. She puts her arm around me and walks me off, which is the most embarrassing thing in the world. And so I go from that at 8 years old. And this is why I love what you're doing for the world, because you're showing and proving you can build this skill.
Yeah.
It is a muscle. And that was my first experience of public speaking. A few years after that, after all the training as well, I was probably speaking to rooms of 0 to 5 people and pouring my heart out into just 5 people. And even now when I look back, I loved it because I just got to be so proficient and practiced. And so when someone's saying, oh, do I have to do this for 4 weeks? Or wait, only 5 people are showing up, or whatever those things are, those were actually really, really beautiful moments. I wanted to ask you, what was your first time public speaking? What was the first ever experience on stage?
Have you recovered from that experience?
I have now.
Okay.
I have now, but even though I started getting trained when I was 11, I probably didn't get half decent until I was like 17 or 18. Like that's why when you said you can get people there in 3 to 4 years, I'm like, that's pretty good, because if I started at 11, I probably got half decent at 16 to 18. I wasn't good when I was like 12, 13, 14. Like all those years were just,
It's such a common story among many of the students that I coach. There usually is some kind of event when they were younger that has led them to believe that I'm terrible at this thing because there wasn't the right support. You were thrown into that. You didn't even practice. You didn't even learn the words, right? So again, like you were set up to almost fail. And a lot of the oral presentations that we do when we're young, that's what they're called, right? Oh, you're going to do a presentation. We're set up to fail.
Yeah.
When you're 11 and you have to do this presentation in front of your class, do they teach you how to use your hands? Do they teach you where to put your notes? Do they teach you how to summarize notes and not write the whole damn thing on cue cards? No, they're setting you up to fail. So this is such a common story because our school system, the entire year has one day where we have to go on in front of the class, do it. And guess what? Guess what happens that day? Oh, I'm sick, mum. I can't go to school. I'm sick. And then you stay, and then you miss the one day you have training. And then if you do the training, you're all set up to fail. You're all set up to. So every person has a version of this. My version of this is a little more dramatic because I was older. I was in university and we had to do a presentation for accounting. And I was so nervous. I remember going to the toilet 10, 12 times. So nervous. And then I got up on stage and I had a sniffle. So I kept touching my nose. I had a sniffle and then I got a blood nose. And then I didn't realize I had a blood nose because I thought it was just booger. So I didn't know. So I swiped it. Blood comes across my face. I don't know I have blood on my face.
While you're speaking?
While I'm speaking. I didn't know it was blood, right? And then obviously a blood vessel went. I was so nervous. Everything was going crazy. And then I didn't realize it was blood. And I was still talking. And then people started laughing. And then I tasted blood. And then the moment I tasted blood, I looked at my hands. There was blood everywhere. I start freaking out. I didn't know what to do. The teachers didn't even know what to do either. Do you know what I had to do? I finished the talk. And
you finished the talk?
Well, it was only a 5-minute presentation. But I finished it because I didn't know what to do. And I panicked. And it was just the worst presentation I'd ever given. From that point, I just thought, yep, you know what? I'm going to avoid this at all costs. I'm never going to do it ever again. This is the worst experience of my life.
Yeah.
And and then I walked off. I'm glad there were no videos back then and no photos.
Oh, there's no,
yes, that's so traumatic.
Wow, that is traumatic, man.
Yeah.
To actually bleed, to be that nervous, to be that stressed.
That's how stressed I was.
Yeah. To experience that, I love that that's where you started. And now if someone watched, like when I watch your videos, I'm like, this guy's a genius.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things I was thinking about as we're doing this, and I'm really trying to put myself in your audience's shoes, my audience's shoes, the community that struggles with this. One thing that I've definitely seen as I've traveled, and we both have international audiences, is this fear that people have around their accents.
Yeah.
And that can often make people quite unconfident.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because obviously when I moved to the States, people really enjoy listening to a British accent in the States. But where I was growing up in London, to me, the smartest people sounded American accents, professors, Harvard, Princeton, Stanford. When you heard these professors do TED Talks or whatever it was always in an American accent. And it's almost like in England, we grew up on American rap music. You grow up to such a culture that our feelings are skewed towards certain accents. And so if you're from a country where you feel, or a state or anywhere, even in the United States, you may feel like your accent isn't well received. How does someone deal with that kind of pressure?
I just believe accents are rarely a problem. It's really the articulation and the pronunciation that lets people down. Because
Interesting.
I just feel that accents are beautiful. I've got students from all over the world, Jay, and
I agree.
I love listening to the accent because it tells a story. It tells me who you are. Where it lets you down is like when I first came to the US, I didn't realize I had so much Australian slang. And Australians use, we shorten all of our words. It's like, yeah, mate, I want to, yeah, maybe I won't, yeah, all right. Like, it's just, I didn't realize I was doing so much of that. And people go, oh, Australian accent is awesome. Yeah, if I'll talk for a sec, you won't even understand what I'm saying if I don't articulate and pronounce my words correctly.
Yeah.
So I really believe that, and I have this happen all the time in my in-person classes where someone will come and ask that very question and they'll have a Polish accent or maybe they'll have an Indian accent. And then the moment I just get them to over-articulate and practice, all of a sudden, it completely changes how they sound. And here's where it happens, Jay. It's because, for me, for example, right, I learned the Vietnamese language. So I learned a set of Vietnamese mouth movements. My big mistake was when I learned English, I used the same set of mouth movements in the Vietnamese language to go speak the English language.
Fascinating.
Right? So then all of a sudden now, when I speak English, my accent wasn't the problem. The problem was I wasn't articulating correctly. So people didn't understand me. I used to not pronounce my T's. British people are good with this, but Australians and even Asians, I didn't do it. So I'd say things like, I can't. I wouldn't pronounce, I can't. I wouldn't pronounce that. And then my T's, I would say free. Oh, can I have 3 of those? Instead of 3 of those.
Yeah.
And then what people were associating with low levels of intelligence was not so much my accent, but it was just because I didn't articulate my words well. And this can happen in any culture. This can happen with any accent. I've heard people with Chinese accents, Indian accents, Polish accents, Russian accents, but when they articulate their words beautifully, oh man, it's like you get to listen to a different genre of music. Otherwise, imagine everyone sounded like us.
Yeah.
There's no flavor. There's no personality. Again, I do not believe accents are a problem. I believe the problem lies in your ability to articulate and your pronunciation. And here's a quick activity that you can do to help with this.
Go for it.
One of the greatest things I learned that my speech pathologist made me do was, first of all, grab a book. And every single day you grab a book for 5 minutes, 4 times a day if you want to take it real seriously. Every time for 5 minutes. Read the book and overdo your lip movements, overdo the tongue movements. And then if you want to take it to the next level, put a pen in your mouth. Because if you put a pen in your mouth, you're forced to over-articulate. And do it out loud. And by doing this, you'll start to learn, and record yourself while you're doing it too, you'll start to learn, oh wow, I struggle with this sound, this consonant, this vowel. And as you start to bring a little bit of awareness to it, you go, oh, right, I need to change the way I'm shaping my lips. I need to change the way. And just going through that process alone, I remember doing that for 3 months.
Wow.
And I had to do that when I came here to the US because I slurred my words a lot. And in Australia, you fully understand me fine, mate. Right? Yeah, there's no dramas with that, eh? But over here, all of a sudden, I was speaking in Texas, and I still remember speaking in Texas for the first time. They were so sweet. They're like, I love the guy, but I ain't got no idea what he's saying. Right? And it was like this weird thing where, and then I literally had to go see a speech pathologist even later in my life because in Australia, it wasn't a problem. And I didn't realize it too. But when I slurred my words that much, it made people think I wasn't smart.
Right.
And this is why people in the world think the British are so smart. Is it just the accent or is it because they articulate extremely well?
Right.
So you can sound smart in any culture, with any accent.
Should we get a couple of pens?
Yeah, we should
Ryan,
do it.
Can you pass us a couple of pens?
Oh, okay.
Just so that people realize
can see and see what it is.
Yeah, and that we also need to do these. Like I'm probably going to contact you straight after this and go, Vin, I'm not kidding you. I mean this. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
What type of pen? Does it matter?
Oh, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It could be a Sharpie.
Yeah. Thicker the pen, the more challenging it is.
That one I think I've already chewed off.
Okay.
Let's not give you one that I've already.
Thank you.
Right, there we go.
This one does not have bite marks.
No, exactly. Look, you can see what I've done with this one. Wait, 1 second.
We'll do this for a segment.
Yeah. But what I was saying was, as soon as we finish this podcast, I'm probably going to message you and say, Vin, can you please critique all of my, I'm going to send you a speech and ask you to help me get better, because I think the mistake is also that you get there and then you don't need these techniques. Or that you don't need to improve and that you don't need to work on it.
Practice anymore.
I think about it all the time. So anyway, let's.
Yeah. Can you see how difficult this is?
Very difficult.
Yeah, all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
And I want people to think about this. Who can you understand better right now?
I'm not sure.
You got to give me more than that, Jay.
Okay, so Rin, how are you today?
Feeling a little bit jet lagged.
Okay.
Because I came all the way from Australia.
Yeah, I just got back from Mexico yesterday.
Oh, that's great.
And I went to a friend's wedding
Oh,
and we had a really good time.
that's beautiful.
I'm really happy for him.
Oh, so happy for you.
It's in doing these things that you start all of a sudden. Now when I speak, I feel like, I'm so sharp.
Totally. I
You
can
do
feel it
feel
too.
it? Yeah.
Even just from a few moments.
Because you're forced to stretch your mouth so much bigger to make the
Right.
shapes to be able to create the sounds. Whereas the biggest problem, and again, this happens in the English language. When you think about the European languages, the Asian languages, we actually don't have to drop our jaw a lot to speak those languages.
Interesting.
Because when I speak Vietnamese, I can do a lot of Vietnamese with my mouth closed. I barely have to move my jaw. English is one of the very few languages where when you think about consciously how you're speaking, you have to drop your jaw so much to speak the English language well. Whereas, again, the Asian cultures, European
Yes.
languages, you don't have to.
Yes.
Again, each language has a different set of mouth movements. So by doing that simply alone, you felt it straight away.
Yeah,
it's because
actually, I can
you had to
feel-
move your jaw so much.
Totally. I can actually feel like
Yeah.
we've worked out.
Yeah.
Like that's what it feels like.
And that we did it for 30 seconds.
Absolutely. And you can keep that pen.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I didn't think you wanted it back.
Yeah, no.
yeah.
I genuinely feel the difference from such a short period of time.
Yeah.
And I could tell if I did it for longer, it would make an even bigger difference.
Well, imagine you did that for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And you started dedicating yourself to
Yes,
that.
yes.
My goodness, within a week,
Yes.
you'll notice your mouth moving differently. And you'll
Yes.
notice yourself sounding more clear. Accents are not a problem. You got to stop thinking that. People always go, I hate my accent. That tells a story. It's your culture. It's your history. It's what makes you unique. And I always love to think of it as it's different genres of music. Yeah.
Yes. And that's what we're seeing in music in the world right now anyway. You're seeing languages pour in
Yeah.
through different artists and people, and it's such a need for that. I wanted to ask you something because this was a big evolution point for me.
Okay.
So from 11 to 18, I went to public speaking school. I got the tools, is how I like to see it. But it was only when I met the monks and I started to learn about Eastern wisdom and philosophy that I felt I had something to talk about. And I wanted to ask you how much you weight the balance between what you have to say and how you say it.
Both equally important. I see some books where I read where they go, no, what you say is more important. And then some books say, no, how you say is more important. And I think they kind of have to do that sometimes because they are an expert in one particular arena. But again, I believe the answer is not which one, it's both. Both just as critical. Same with me. I think until I found the purpose and the fulfillment from teaching public speaking, I didn't really have much to talk about.
Right.
I didn't. And until I found that, then all of a sudden I started creating content. Then the content started to take off. And I think it's because I love how you've positioned what you do here. It's on purpose. When I found that purpose and I had the tools and I was able to use my instrument, then all of a sudden